This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Down on the text line, NorCal. Big O, sorry about my phone. Chat soon. Fins for life. It's like he knows. Like
you can't make this up.
No, you can't. You can't. It's like he's calling me when he knows I'm on the air. Just too funny, man. It's too funny. Anyway, Ira, good morning, sir. How was your weekend?
Oh, it was crazy, Big O. With all this, COVID stuff going on with the heat and everything else. I almost feel like you and I one day are going to do like a Jerry Springer show, and I'm going to take a test on the air while I'm on with you, and then we'll go the whole audience and go positive, positive, positive. It's just crazy. And Eric Spoelstra, I give all the credit in the world. Look,
I saw your article.
Most coaches won't say anything. They don't want to rock the boat. Eric is opinionated, and on something like this, I think he has a really good case. And I want to make this point. Again, one, this is a serious, serious pandemic. Don't lose track of that, number one. Number two, as Eric Spoelstra said, if this was the flu, which honestly is an annual serious pandemic as well, we go through every year, not to this degree, we wouldn't know. Think about this, among the most famous moments in the history of sports, might be Michael Jordan's flu game, right? When he's hugging the ball, he's in the locker room, and they're winning a championship. Well, under these testing procedures, if they tested for the flu, that game never would have happened. All these sports, the flu. How many games have you covered where you talked about someone was sick, but he gutted it out there and he went out there? Right. I understand this is highly infectious. I get it. I appreciate all that the people, the medical staffs, the epidemiologists are doing. But at some point, you're only getting these results because you're testing so often. So I think it's interesting. One, everyone on the Heat has been fully vaccinated and fully boosted. Two, in the group that they are in, mid-20s, maybe early 30s, they're least likely to contract anything very serious. I can't recall, maybe you can, of a highly serious NBA hospitalization case. We have seen it with older players, former players, Cedric Ceballos, players like that, but not current players. So you reach a point, even in society right now, where, I'll give you an example. You work out of a home studio. Even if you were to test positive, you could go to work. You would sit there in the same studio. You might isolate from your family, but you would do your job. It's an interesting point that Eric Spoelstra brought up. And you know what? I'm on pins and needles for this reason. I can't recall a single team that only had one positive test, and that was the extent of it. Once you get a positive test on your team, you're testing more often. Once you test more often, just almost the law of averages these days. Plus, we're here in Cleveland. I'm actually overlooking the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and Baker Mayfield's house just directly across from me here. So I'm looking at all that, and you can just see in the Great Lakes area that the positivity rate has gone higher. So let me get this straight, NBA. You're sending the Heat to Cleveland. You're sending them to Detroit. You know the positivity rate is high. What are you expecting? And on the other hand, is it fair to people who are buying tickets to games like in Chicago, now that they're going back home, where they have 7, 8, 9 players not available? Is that the product that I signed up to buy?
Right. No, you're right about that. No, obviously. But again, money rules. So they got to get the games in. They got to get their TV contract money in. And that's
I give you one other thing. And I was told by this also from someone.
Question to ask you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. And then one other thing, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. I was talking to some of the NBA, the Christmas Day games. And the NBA is doing everything they can to protect their cash cow, as I guess everyone does also. So many times you see, after this event, we're going to shut down or something like that. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we know that December 25th is sort of the NBA's non-playoff Super Bowl. And it means everything to the league. I think the thought of the NBA is, hey, if we get through Christmas, we'll take a day off. We'll maybe park a team like the NHL has done with the Islanders and with the Senators. But it just seems this is all trending toward we want Christmas, and the NBA will not allow COVID to be the Grinch.
All right. So now the cynical one in me now also starts coming out here. So we're watching a lot of positives in the NFL, and we're watching a lot of positives right now in the NBA. I'm just thinking Antonio Brown now. I'm wondering how many guys are walking around with fake cards and they're actually contracting this thing for the first time and they're really not vaccinated. And I'm just wondering what kind of a problem does the NBA or the NFL, or do they even have a problem when it comes to fake vaccination cards? Because I got to feel that Antonio Brown and the two other guys that were busted aren't the only three guys to do this in pro sports.
Well, the NBA is a very proactive league and things like this. It probably sides a little more toward a liberal line of thinking. It's just their constituency. Yes. I believe that just about every NBA vaccination has been team administered. I think the teams want that. I think they wanted to make sure their players were getting the right vaccination, vaccinated the right way, that it takes hold, that they were getting the reaction. So I think a little bit of a difference is the NFL has a huge offseason. So a lot of this was done. Think about the major vaccination period last year. It was February, March, April. It was away from NFL season. I think the NBA not only says, when they say they have a 97% vaccination rate, I think it's also 97% administered by the league. I'm going to be honest with you. If Kyrie Irving shows up to Brooklyn and said, hey, here's my vaccination card, I think the first question all of us will have is, did the Nets administer it? Was the NBA involved? Who was your witness? And I'm not saying that you can't trust people, that, I'm on public transportation all the time. I'm in the airport. I'm everywhere. People are showing their vaccination cards. As you know, in Florida, when you go, I went to the Broward public health sites. It's just chicken scrawl and ink. Anyone can write that. It's just a matter of decency. It's a matter of when you leave the bar and you say, I didn't drink, or I only had one beer. I mean, a lot of our society is based on sort of trust. It sucks when you get an Antonio Brown or someone like that who lies like that. But you know what? That's the same guy who grabs his keys, walks outside and said, I just had one, I'm fine. You can only control so much, and you're putting society at risk. That's the whole thing. I even had to talk. I don't mean to get too tangential here, and I apologize because I know I can be long-winded. But I even had to talk with Eric Spoelstra the other day. We were just talking in general about this. And I said, I remember a time my dad would tell me when he signed up and enlisted in World War II, that if you could help your fellow man, that was life. That was the most important thing you did. Yes. That here is my dad as an 18-year-old from Eastern New York, bypassing college, enlisting because he wanted to save humanity, basically.
Right.
And you're giving everyone, I don't mean to demean what we do. I'm a writer. You're a radio sports host. We have good jobs. We don't save lives. We're not policemen. We're not firemen. But you have a chance now to save a life. If you get the jab, if you get your booster, there's a chance you might save maybe not an NBA player's life, but maybe someone who's 65 or 70 or immunocompromised. That's what I don't get. And again, I'm glad we're not on mainstream radio, so I could say it. It just seems like a whole bunch of assholery that's going on out there. And for John Stockton to say, well, I saw it on the internet. Well, I saw a lot of stuff on the internet, and I'm not ingesting that crap either.
Yeah, we're not selfless enough as a society. Unfortunately, that's just the reality that we live in. It's all about my brand. It's all about my interests. Doesn't matter what it is, man. And it just seems to be that way. And we don't fight for each other anymore. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that's what your father was talking about. And that's what people used to do. They used to fight for each other. And we just don't do that anymore. Now it's every man for himself, or every woman for himself, or whatever it is, So yeah,
so
it's a separate. But that's the part that I started to see all these positives.
Right.
And I'm wondering, oh man, how many fake cards are involved in all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think not as much in the NBA, and I'm not so sure in the NFL. It's not a little bit from ownership, which tends to skew sort of.
Well, they're a little more loosey goosey over there, yes. So
yeah, I'm not so sure. It's a little bit of a wink, wink. Okay, you have a card, you're fine. Come play for us, help me make money. Yeah.
Right. Because the NFL was all hell bent loose on not giving in to anything, and they weren't willing to stop the machine for anything whatsoever.
Hell, they played with replacement players for years. You remember the replacement Dolphins, and that still counted as a season.
That's where we got Lifford Hobley from, by the way.
Yeah,
he came from the Scabs. Actually, he's one of the few that actually stuck from Shula's Scab team. No Morris. No Butler again tonight. They did not make the trip to take on the Cavs tonight, correct?
They did not. It's such a weird trip, Big O, in that we're in Cleveland right now, in Philly for a game on Wednesday night. But then they go to Orlando on Friday before going to Chicago, before going to Detroit on Sunday. So it's the rare trip they could drive players up in the middle of the trip. So Jimmy is going to miss tonight, is going to miss Wednesday in Philly, but there's a chance he could just take an Uber, I don't know, and wind up with the team in Orlando. I think it's going to be how this trip starts. I think if they can go 1-1 in these two, again, you and I have spoken 3 times a week, twice a week here on the Acura Pembroke Pines report. You're just treading water without Bam. You're treading water without Markeith. You wanted to stay around 500 in these games and then make your move. So I think they're going to sort of see how these first two go. Whether they have to put out the bat signal for Jimmy Butler or not, we'll see when they hit Orlando on Friday.
By the way, an incredibly impressive game. I'm sorry, on Saturday against Chicago. Before I get into that, by the way, I just want you to know NBC 10 in Philadelphia. I'm looking right here. Breaking: Philadelphia, since you're going there, will require proof of vaccination to eat indoors in restaurants or drink inside bars starting January 3rd. So you're in the clear right now.
You know what? But I was actually told by the Heat that starting December 17th, the league's rules will tighten also. So make sure you have your vaccination card. So I had Antonio Brown fill in all 3 lines for me. So I'm fine.
Awesome. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the win against
Chicago.
The Bulls the other night. I mean, that was a sweet performance by the boys, a complete performance, and it's kind of what we talked about the other day. I loved where Lowry he scored his points, but he didn't have to carry anything.
Right.
It was more about facilitating and creating for everybody else.
And I know a lot of people will say, hey, wait a minute, Ira and Big O, Chicago had 7 players out. You know what? You can make an argument that of the 5 best players on the court, which I would put going into that game with Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero, Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, and Lonzo Ball, that Chicago arguably had 3 of the 5 best players on the court that night. So, yes, the teams are shorthanded, but I think Chicago had a little more star quality. Zach LaVine was outstanding and then went into COVID protocol the very next day, which kind of has you a little bit concerned playing 40 minutes against him. But yeah, again, we talked about, this is so much about treading water, about just staying afloat. The schedule gets easier. Bam Adebayo is going to be back hopefully mid-January. Markieff Morris is at least trending that way. I think the Heat, if there almost was an over-under for the final 41 games, I would take the over no matter what. I think they're going to be that strong. They'll be together. Hopefully there's not a COVID incident. So you're just trying to tread water. So the win against the Bucks at home, huge. The win against Chicago at home on Saturday, meaningful. This trip, Eric Spoelstra will never tell us this. But if they go 2-2, I'm fine with that. As long as you get the game in Orlando, as long as you get the game in Detroit, who now are lacking Jeremy Grant, I'm fine with that also. So to me, when you ask me, we'll talk again in the Pallet Rack City Inside the Paint on Wednesday. I'll talk to you again Friday on our Acura Pembroke Pines report. If he can get one of these 2 games, tonight against an emerging Cleveland team or Wednesday in Philadelphia, I think this trip will be off to a flying start.
Well, and here's the thing that I think what's happened here in the last couple games has kind of been, believe it or not, because I know some people are going to, what do you mean by this? But it is a confidence booster because they were confident, obviously, when they're whole. When Bam's out there and Butler's out there and everybody, and you got your big guys, everybody, the younger guys always feel better because they got the big guys in front of them. So they're walking with, but then when you take out the big guys and all of a sudden you're put to the forefront, you're like, are we ready for this? It's like the Saturday Night Live thing that you and I grew up with, the not ready for primetime players at the back end of the, whole thing. So all of a sudden the not ready for primetime players have been now thrusted into there. And so it kind of got a little uneasy there for a moment. And they're wondering, okay, so what are we? Are we still a good team? And the last couple of games, I think they kind of looked at each other and said, you see, we can be a good team. So I think mentally going into these 2 games, they're a much better team because they have found out more about themselves in the last couple of games. Agree?
I always say this. If your bit players can contribute 2, 3, maybe 5 victories in a season, you're ahead of the game for your end of benchers. So let's go through this list now, Big O. Gabe Vincent has done that. Max Strus, 4th quarter against Milwaukee, has done that. Dwayne Dedman with his double-double on Saturday has
Yes.
done that. And who would have thought? And KZ Okpala has done that. That you're talking about guys in a perfect world when you're starting Bam Adebayo and PJ Tucker and Duncan Robinson and Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry, and your next three off the bench were supposed to be Hero, Dedman, and Morris. You're talking about three other guys who arguably weren't even supposed to play, and they're helping you. And you know what? You and I, when we talk about the standings in April, and you're going, wow, Ira, they just finished 2 games ahead of Atlanta and 1 game ahead of Philly, and they're in good shape for the playoffs. Let's not forget what Gabe Vincent did. Let's not forget what Max Strus did. And let's not even forget these last 2 games what KZ Okpala did. Sometimes it's that razor-thin margin, like we're seeing in the NFL playoffs, that can make a difference.
And I thought the statement by Lowry, I'm going to paraphrase it like we're playing with intentions or something like that. Or I love that line by him because when you watch what's going on, you know, I don't know if cages were rattled. I don't know if the older guys looked at the younger guys and go, "Hey, let's go, guys. This is your moment. Let's go." But there was something there. The tone was set, in other words.
He's an MFing leader. And sometimes players lead by their ability. But even someone like LeBron James, who's been called a great leader, leads because he gets it done himself. I think he didn't always have great patience for other players. Matter of fact, ask Mario Chalmers about that. So I think he was hard for him. Kyle Lowry has great patience for everyone. He has patience for KZ Okpala. He has patience for Gabe Vincent. He has patience to make it work. Think how hard that is, to be a leader in one franchise for a decade, to come to total newcomers and to take over that locker room. God bless what UD does on the side, but on the court, what Kyle Lowry and to an almost equal degree PJ Tucker have done as new guys coming in. You know how it is. Even when you went to other radio stations and other places, you sort of had to stay in your corner, mind your business. You were just part of this here before you went independent. And yet those 2 guys, they didn't give a crap. They said, hey, if we're here, I'm going to do what I've done with Kyle Lowry in Toronto, with PJ Tucker and 9 other stops. I'm going to lead. Their veteran leadership had just been immeasurable and basically irreplaceable.
You mentioned it. Is it real? Is it Memorex? KZ Okpala? Is it that hey, listen, sometimes the light goes on, later on for some players. So is the light coming on later on for KZ Okpala, or is it just an aberration, just 2 freakish games?
Well, I've said so far, the unfortunate part, he's been a once-a-month player. And I thought after Milwaukee, that was once a month. So now the question is, what he did in Chicago, is that the start of a trend, or did that take care of January? Did he already check that box? If you're a once-a-month player, then you're not someone you can say much about except, hey, he had a moment. You know what? He backed it up a little bit, not too much against Chicago. If he backs it up against on this trip, I'll move him up on my board to more than once-a-month player, maybe twice-a-month player.
Let me make a note here. It's 28 minutes. I looked at the box score, and Spo trusted him.
Well, Spo didn't have other players also, Big O.
No, but still, it's 28 minutes that the kid played. There's something going on there,
There's
Ira.
something going on, but he also was short. He also was shorthanded.
Okay, all right. So you think it was
look,
more...
who else was he going to play? Marcus Garrett, number 0, who just got back from the G League. The only players who didn't play,
or leave other guys out there for more minutes that played.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
You know what?
That's 28 minutes.
Yeah. But on the way out, that's something I want to address also. You also, during these injury times, can't burn out players. Kyle Lowry's still 35. PJ Tucker is still 36. Eric Spoelstra's really good, as almost as much as any coach I've seen. He also looks at the big picture and he realizes, yes, the win against Milwaukee was important. Yes, the win against Chicago is important, but I need these guys in March, April, and May. And that's why maybe when KZ Okpala, the kind of game he had against Chicago, in any other time would have been an 18-minute performance. The only 2 available players who did not see major action were Udonis Haslem and Marcus Garrett. So Eric's handling this real smart. He is, as we've talked about the top of this Acura Pembroke Pines report, pissed about how the league is handling these positive results. But on the other hand, one thing about Eric, you give him all the conditions and he sits down there and he has his focus and he decides how he's going to do it and he finds the right way. So yes, guys who might not merit the minutes might be getting the minutes now because having Kyle Lowry, PJ Tucker, and the older players ready for March, April, and May is what means the most.
Yeah, and in the end, it would be really nice if he hits, even if it's late, because that would really help the Heat out. And obviously a young player
Right.
that you've
Anyway,
invested
I've got
in.
to run because right
Go,
across from
go.
me is a football stadium. I told Baker Mayfield I would help him do the laundry before I left, and then I got to get over to shoot around. So
All
I
right,
will
get
catch
out of
you
here,
on
Ira.
Wednesday.
Thank you, my brother.
I'll catch Clay for the 1 hour, Pallet Rock City Inside the Paint from Philadelphia. So if you want to know where Ira is, just turn on the Big O show. Thank you, Big O.
There you go. Be good, brother. There you go. Ira Winderman, Ira Heat Beat on Twitter. That is the Acura Pembroke Pines, Miami Heat, an NBA report as he races out to Heat shoot around, which is at 11 a.m. He told me. So